The following program is a SUTV student production. The views expressed are not necessarily those of Salisbury University, the University System of Maryland, its regents, administration, officers, employees, or representatives.
Hello everyone, welcome to Delmarva Salutes, a show covering Salisbury's military and veteran communities. I'm Tal Carmel.
And I'm Stephen Graves. As veterans return home from our wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, some need help overcoming the mental effects of war.
The Department of Veterans Affairs estimates over 300,000 soldiers deployed in the past 12 years suffer with post-traumatic stress disorder. Returning soldiers suffer quietly due to the stigma PTSD has among fellow veterans and within our society. Delmarva Salutes reporter Matthew Bennett introduces us to a few local veterans who suffer with PTSD and aren't afraid to talk about it.
Staff Sergeant Robert Clayton says he knows exactly what caused his post-traumatic stress disorder, the loss of a buddy.
One of my good friends was a medic, and he was in the vehicle in front of us. They got hit with an IED, which is an improvised explosive device.
According to the Defense Medical Surveillance System, thousands of soldiers return home each year with mental instability, which is sometimes diagnosed as post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. Some have received help, but many, like Clayton, still have yet to be diagnosed.
I went to a VA clinic there in Hagerstown, Maryland, and that's where I talked to my counselor for the first and only time.
Tasha Thomas, a senior counselor at Salisbury University's Student Counseling Center, says seeking professional help through therapy can be very helpful for troubled soldiers.
Counseling is very healthy, and there's nothing wrong with speaking to someone about concerns that you might be experiencing.
Thomas says soldiers often must fight a military culture that discourages admitting weakness. Major John Black, a veteran of Afghanistan, says for him, overcoming that stigma wasn't easy.
Even though the military preaches that mental health is there, those of us who have been around a long time, it's a pride thing. You just don't want to tell people that you have these problems.
But mental health professionals say changing that culture is key. For help, local veterans can visit Veterans Affairs clinics in nearby Cambridge or Pocomoke. In Salisbury, I am Matthew Bennett reporting.
The Department of Veteran Affairs says acknowledging you have the disorder is the first step. Seeking help and getting treatment will help both the veteran and his or her family.
And recently, troops in Salisbury received a warm welcome from friends and family as they returned home after a long tour in Afghanistan. It was an emotional event for this tight-knit unit, but what isn't talked about is the bond between spouses left behind during deployment. Delmarva Salutes reporter John Pardee tells us more about these family members and how they cope while their loved one is at war.
Homecomings like this one are planned out all over the U.S. This unit, Salisbury's 115th Military Police Battalion, is one of 33,000 American troops that will return home from war by February. Military family member Judith Andrews says, just as soldiers consider members of their unit's family, the spouses of deployed soldiers form a similar bond.
I think with the first time round, the new ones, they need to be around families who've been through it already, because that's where they're going to get their support from.
The 115th just completed an 11-month tour in Afghanistan. That puts an enormous amount of pressure on the spouses that leave at home. Jenna McGriff, a Vietnam War-era spouse, says, not only did she worry about her husband, she had to take care of the everyday things, like paying the bills and caring for the kids.
I personally got calls from somebody, we to this day don't know who, saying that he was going to die over there. And when you're sitting in Salisbury with a baby, that's just not really what you want to hear on the phone.
Each military branch offers its own assistance and support groups to military families. Community organizations also provide free services and support like the Red Cross, the YMCA, and local VFWs. But Andrew says helping a military family doesn't have to be a grand gesture.
Call them, let them know you're there.
Like with all families, it's the little things that mean a lot. In Salisbury, I'm John Pardier reporting.
And military spouses of deployed soldiers can also visit troopsupport.com for a list of other groups and organizations that offer support.
How are these veterans being treated upon their return, and are they having trouble finding jobs?
We will talk about all of that and more when Delmarva Salutes continues. Stay with us.
I've got a job to do today.
I've got a job to do today.
Have a good first day at work, Mom.
Your donations to Goodwill fund job training programs right into your community.
Feels good to start fresh, right?
Sure does. And like that, you're a job creator.
Welcome back to Delmarva Salutes. The United States military has roughly 1.2 million active soldiers. Every year, thousands of those soldiers will leave the military and re-enter civilian life. Recently, I got a chance to meet several people, civilians and veterans alike, who help returning soldiers who have come upon hard times. Some veterans here at Salisbury's American Legion Post 64 feel the government doesn't help those who served enough. They suggest the government could learn a thing or two from its veterans.
The older veterans really give a lot of respect to the younger veterans. You know, they look out after them. But overall, all veterans, the people in the country seem to give all veterans their due respect.
According to the United States Department of Veterans Affairs, over 450,000 veterans live in the state of Maryland alone. Organizations like the Wounded Warrior Project gave over 80% of its profits last year to veterans nationally. Local non-profit organizations like the Brothers at Arms Motorcycle Club support Delmarva's veterans. The Brothers at Arms president, who goes only by Heat, says they do this through local appearances and fundraising events.
Some of us have served in the military, some of us haven't, but we are serving now. We are trying to give back to the community of the veterans.
Hagan thinks it's the duty of all Americans to thank those who've served.
If it hadn't been for the veteran or the active duty soldier, you wouldn't have the freedoms that you enjoy today.
Operation We Care is holding an all-you-can-eat breakfast buffet on November 10th in Salisbury's American Legion Post 218 off State Street in Sharptown to raise awareness for the organization. The all-you-can-eat breakfast starts at 7 a.m. on November 10th. The cost is $7.
And recent labor statistics indicate more veterans are finding work these days. The current unemployment rate for recent wartime era vets is 7.3%, down significantly from over 12% at this time last year. Delmarva Salutes reporter J.T. Landon tells us about a few local programs that help soldiers get a job and a fresh start.
There's good news for young veterans. The U.S. Department of Labor reports a substantial drop in the unemployment rate of recently returning war veterans. Private contractor and Navy veteran Chris Eccleston says he's committed to hiring vets that go beyond loyalty.
I think that the construction industry as a whole provides a unique opportunity for veterans because veterans typically in a military operation, you are goal-oriented, where you have a mission and the goal is to complete the mission.
Labor statistics show that more veterans are finding work these days. Employment programs like in the Salisbury Area Chamber of Commerce Foundation's Project Opportunity may be playing a part. The program offers a 10-week program to train veterans who want to start their own business. Joe Gordano is a retired Army officer that provides the training.
For veterans who want to start their own business. It's not an exploratory program, it's a program for veterans who have a specific business idea, because what we do is give them the information, tools, resource, and knowledge they need to research and develop a good business plan.
Corporate and civic donations help fund Project Opportunity. This fundraising at the Chamber of Commerce meets program costs.
Project Opportunity is funded through two main ways. We had three banks, Bank of America, BB&T Bank and M&T Bank. Also have local American Legions and VFWs that provide donations.
Rondo and Eccleston both recalled the difficulty they had finding work after the military service. They just want to make it easier for this wave of returning soldiers. In Salisbury, I'm JT Landon reporting.
Giordano says of the 10 to 12 veterans who enter the program every year, about 85% of them graduate. And when we return, we'll tell you about an important food program that is being forced to scale down due to budget cuts. We also take a look at the future soldiers of America.
Those cutbacks are leaving some veterans and the elderly hungry. And we'll tell you about a shortage of military instructors tasked to train our next generation's officers when Delmarva Salutes continues.
It's harder whenever there's a bigger group. Pretty much a good day for me would be people leaving their hands off of me. I'm always called names. Everywhere that I go, there's always someone calling me names, calling me gay. I've been choked, thrown up against a wall, punched. Nobody's ever tried to help me.
And one program that many veterans in our area depend on for nutrition and a daily meal faces the threat of closure. I got the chance to visit the local Meals on Wheels program here in Salisbury to explore this problem.
Meals on Wheels delivery man Wayne Earp brings meals to the needy. As a Vietnam War era veteran himself, he says delivering meals to veterans in need saddens him more than others.
I know that some of them aren't as receptive because they're the best way to put it, possibly a little bit introverted for good reason.
The local nonprofit Meals on Wheels program delivers about 300 hot meals each week to seniors, including vets like Milton Edwards who have special dietary needs or who are unable to cook for themselves.
Sometimes, when I cook for myself, I'll go over and I'm a diabetic. And the food that I get from Meals on Wheels really help me a whole lot.
This program here in Salisbury is currently cut to a 4-day-a-week delivery system. This is all because of federal budget cuts known as the sequester, which could ultimately shut down the program here in Salisbury, as well as numerous other ones around the country. The federal government provides the majority of funding for Meals on Wheels. Salisbury's program officials say they feed at least half a dozen local vets.
Some of our participants are unable to cook for themselves. They don't are unable to buy groceries. So that meal is important, as well as a friendly face delivering it.
And veteran Wayne Earp says he'll continue to be that friendly face as long as he's able.
You have a good day, buddy.
The Meals on Wheels Association of America has been forced to add waiting lists for seniors and to cut an average of 364 meals per week.
ROTC programs train tomorrow's officers today, but these programs require trainers to be successful. Delmarva Salutes reporter Ryan Downing introduces us to Salisbury University's ROTC program and the lone instructor tasked with preparing these students for the officer ranks.
The Salisbury University Reserved Officers Training Corps, or ROTC program, trains tomorrow's officers today. But right now, they need a few more good men to help train these cadets. Captain Kyle Sullivan is a former active-duty U.S. Army officer and the only instructor in Salisbury's ROTC program.
I'm currently in this spot as a contractor. With the instructors, you've got active-duty personnel, you've got active guard, you've got full-time technicians, and you've got contractors. And we have a technician slot for another captain just at this school.
The other officer that was here recently left to teach at another school, leaving a training void for cadets like Joshua Torr.
A couple weeks ago, we lost Captain Engelman, who was infantryman. So learning battle drills was kind of his strong point.
Having served for 5 years on active duty in hotspots like Korea, Iraq, and Afghanistan, Captain Sullivan brings a wealth of field experience that he passes on to future officer hopefuls like Robert Swada.
They're the ones that are going to be teaching us, ultimately, preparing us, pretty much putting people's lives in our hands. So it only makes sense to learn from people who have been there.
According to the U.S. Army, there are over 20,000 cadets enrolled in ROTC programs nationwide. With SU's program growing each year, experts worried that with too few instructors and a lack of former active duty veterans to help, Salisbury's program effectiveness may suffer. In Salisbury, I'm Ryan Downing, reporting.
Captain Sullivan tells Delmarva Salutes that a new instructor, fresh from deployment in Afghanistan, will be joining the program sometime in November.
Well, that's Delmarva Salutes for now. Thanks for joining us. I'm Stephen Graves.
And I'm Tal Carmel. We'll see you next time.